This is a presentation of Welcome Molalla, where we bring you fun and informative videos from within our community. In today's episode, Iris Riley and Victoria Knight will give you a tour of the Dibble House, the oldest remaining structure in Molalla and the jewel of the museum.
Hello, my name is Iris Riley and I'm the president of the Molalla Area Historical Society. Today I would like to show you around the Dibble House. The Dibble House has been owned by the Historical Society since 1968 to 1970, and it's one of the oldest buildings in this part of Clackamas County. It's definitely the oldest building in Molalla, having been built between 1856 and 1859. These are pictures of Horace and Julia Dibble, whom the house was built for. They did not build the house themselves. They were pioneers of 1852 and settled originally in the Navy area, which is around Barnard's Road off of Highway 213. Over here, I'd like to show you the fireplace. This is not real wood. This has been painted with a technique called grading, which is what the Dibbles originally had on the fireplace. And this was done for us by Victoria Knight after we discovered that it was grading that was indeed the original paintwork on this part. The fireplace features this lovely clock, which did belong to the Dibbles and probably came over the Oregon Trail with them. The clock itself was built in the 1840s, and it was probably a wedding present to the Dibbles, who came out from Iowa. Over here, I would like to show you pictures. We have photographs of the Dibbles. This is a picture of Horace and Julia when they were probably around the time that they were first married in 1845. And they were married in Iowa. And here are Julia's parents, the Sturgis family, and they also came out to Molalla, but a year later, and they are buried up in the Sanders Cemetery. And this is Horace's mother, Ruth Gates Dibble. Again, these are the Dibble daughters, the surviving Dibble daughters, Eliza and Mariah and Amy, and the Dibble sons who survived to adulthood. And this is Roswell, who was known as Rod, Thomas, who was known as Tom, who actually had the Dibble family orchestra, and they played music around Molalla, and Walter Perry Dibble, the youngest, and he was the one who stayed with his mother, who was dutiful, never married, never had children, and he took care of the Dibble estate after his parents were gone and sold the land to developers, and the Dibble land became a huge piece of what is now Molalla. Over in the corner, I would like to show you a hammered dulcimer that was actually played as part of the Dibble family orchestra. This dulcimer belonged to Ina Dibble, who is the Dibble's granddaughter. Her father, Thomas, and her brother, Guy, were part of the Dibble family orchestra. And in 1904, this dulcimer was purchased for her by her father from the 1904 Sears catalog. Behind it, you can see some music that was handwritten, and this is actual music that the Dibbles played for local dances, barn dances, school gymnasium dances around the town. And they were a well-known and popular source of music for the area. This table was built by her father to house the hammered dulcimer. This was a gift to us from Janet Martin. It was in the custody of the Ramsey family for many years after Miss Ina died. Now, Miss Ina Dibble, if you have not heard of her, she lived for 98 years And she was a figure in Molalla. She lived up in the hills south of town by herself after her parents died, and her father died in 1945. So after that, she lived all by herself in the woods. She had a reputation for being a hermit. She was just a lovely person. She made hats. She made all of her own hats, and you will see many pictures of her, and she's always wearing a hat with bright pink cheeks, and we have many of her hats in our collection. So it would be fun to come and see them sometime. This organ is part of our collection. It is very similar to the one that another Dibble granddaughter who lived in this area all of her life, Mrs. Ola Dibble Melton Warwick. She taught organ to many students in the area, and she was a fairly popular, well-known person. She died in 1963, I believe, and she lived in a house up on the hill off of Warwick Road that her parents built, and that house is still standing today. And we have a picture of her playing a very similar organ to this one. There's a story about Ola that her father had a seizure disorder. That's what nurses call it. And it was kind of a disruptive thing. Back in those days, seizure disorders were really thought to be a scary, horrible phenomenon, almost like a curse from God. And after these started manifesting in his life, his wife decided that they were hereditary, and she did not want Ola to marry. So when she married her first husband, another local boy named James Melton, who helped out on the farm, her mother wouldn't let them live together as husband and wife. So needless to say, the marriage did not last. He married one of the Herman girls, and they ended up moving to Portland, and Ola stayed around and lived at home and took care of her parents. And after their deaths, she married a widower named Cal Warwick, who was quite a bit older than her, but she was 47 at the time, and that was it. She never had children either, though she worked with many children in the area and was a popular person around town, well known, and again musical. I would like to introduce to you Miss Victoria Knight, who is one of our board members, and she is also the artist who did the mural work in this building and in other buildings. If you come visit us, you will see her work. And Victoria would like to finish the tour of the Dibble House.
Hi, I'm Victoria Knight. I've been with the Molalla Area Historical Society since 2013. It's my privilege to share this day with you. Thanks for coming and visiting the Dibble House and all the buildings that go with it. I'd like to invite you into the kitchen. This is where they lived. This is where the real activity went. The conversations that nobody wanted to have, the conversations that everybody wanted to have, the food, the times when things were tough, putting together meals that were kind of sparse, having banquets and things, what they would consider banquets, gathering family members and maybe eating outside. This was the place where the living happened. The front area there, the front room, was where people came to see, to meet, and to visit. But this was the room of life. This is sort of like the heart of the house, which it is still today in a lot of ways. This is the kitchen area. It's one of those places where you would think there would be a lot of cupboard space and a lot of eating area space and a lot of preparation space. No, this was like hot and difficult to work in. Matter of fact, the stove would be going on from early morning to late at night. And in the nighttime, they would bank out of this little piece here, they would bank the fire so that it was in the far back, so that the light, the heat, and the fire would not go out, so there would be something the next morning. This is an important thing: heat, water, Very important in this time frame. Also, you wouldn't see spices on top of this stove. They would, of course, been fried. So nothing up here would have been available for people to touch. In here, this would be the warmer, so you could put your loaves of bread or muffins. They would start to rise. And this, of course, was a very difficult place for having little children come in. Don't want the children in this area. Although at a certain age, you would now be responsible for bringing in the wood. That was something that children would have to be. All that kindling had to be fed into this fireplace to keep it going. And one of those fun little facts about these stoves, if you bake a cake, you have to remember to turn it. Otherwise, half of it gets baked and the other half doesn't. So in here, you would open it up and you would turn your cake so that hopefully it would be pretty evenly done. Very important, and probably one of the most important places in the house. When newborn babies were having a difficult time, they always put them near the fire, near this stove here where it was a more even heat. Over here on this side is the sink. Nothing like the modern stuff that we know today. This is called a dry sink. It doesn't have running water in it. You bring the water in, you do what you have to do, and it drains. That drained water would be collected. It would be used then for the plants outside. It was a have to do. In the hot, dry times of the year, everything was used. There wasn't going to be this misuse and abuse of what you had for resources. So dry sink was just fine. Everything was collected. It was also easy to replace when it finally rotted out. This one is an original. This is one of the serious things that were actually made and built. I love touching it. I really do love touching it because I know there were a whole lot of hours of women and men out here trying to stand in front of this place here. In the bottom, you can see it's a little bit rotted out, which is to be expected. Cupboard space, not an issue. There wasn't any. Over here, you have storage of dishes. And of course, we have the spices up here so we get an idea of what the kind of spices were available. That's all part of the museum. But in the real time, in the day, this would be used for your normal daily crockware. It wasn't going to be even fancy. There's a cupboard for fancy, but this is not going to be the place. So everything that you use, one of the things I really enjoy about this, if it wasn't useful, it wasn't here. You just can't afford to keep little knick-knacky things unless they have great meaning. And here it is. We have these type of cupboards that have a screen on them for keeping flies out. It's a pie cabinet.
Pie safe.
A pie safe. And that, of course, the flies would be after your pies too, but so would little boys. But it didn't keep them out at all. I'd like to invite you for dinner. This was the dinner table. Narrow and long. For large-scale families, they didn't actually have a whole lot they were putting on the table itself, like the great big dishes of fruits and vegetables that we all serve ourselves. This wasn't the case. Firstly, there wasn't that kind of food. And secondly, there wasn't enough room in most cabins and houses. This is actually a lovely room considering, but the tables had to be narrow. They had to fit people, not stuff. The chairs, kind of rickety, kind of scary to sit in if you were anyone other than Goldilocks. They were web seating and usually done out of rawhide. That was an easy way to replace it and repair it when you didn't have caners in the community. But they're not real secure. Remember, people then were a lot smaller than people are today. Nutrition, all sorts of different reasons, genetics. So here's your table. Imagine a lot of people around this table and they bring up stools to fill in the gaps. And of course, children, they may or may not have their own place to sit, but often they were eating at a different time so that the grown-ups would have their own space. Then we have, and here is one of our children. Well, not a real one, but here's a really good example of what you would be looking at. And look at this, easy in, easy out, but not very safe. Still, a lot of people live through it, just like they always do. Two of the Dibble children were born right here in this house. This would be a very common set, especially if you had more than one child. There would be several ages in these chairs, not just little teeny weeny people. And often a little kiddie table that would be used and reused for many different things. Over here, the china cabinet. Now this is where your fancy stuff would go, especially if you were hoping people would notice. That's one of those things like, don't we have a little bit more than you do type of cabinet, and that's where those china cabinets actually began, is like, let's show you what we have. But it's also a great storage place. On this side over here is another pie cabinet, which has the screening, as you can see. Again, flies are an issue, bugs are an issue. What do? You put a screening over the top of it so they can cool, and there would be storage. In here, these crocks, some have lids, and others that are a lot smaller were used for canning. Now these are more newer options. So the crocks were still used in the early times. Then came the canning lids and canning glasses. The crocks would be filled with whatever it was that you were preserving, and then wax would be dumped or literally coated on the top, and it would be sealed until you needed it. And at that point, it would go into a root cellar somewhere where it was an even temperature, usually under the house or some sort of a ground hole built in with a covering over it, so that all through the year it would maintain about the same temperature. Now you're in the birthing room. One of my favorite places to go because there's story in here. Well, there's story everywhere, but story in here. This room is an offshoot of the kitchen. It's warm, it's on the lower level, it has its own fireplace, it has a coziness about it that was actually for the more wealthy to have a room like this where you could actually put people that needed special care, mothers who were to deliver, grandparents who were aging. This was a perfect place for people to be. It could also be the sewing room. It was a place right off of the kitchen, so that means it was very used. Over here we have a city, it has 2 windows. This is a big deal for this type of light. And then behind me is from the 1930s, a crazy quilt done with pieces of, in this case, velvet, all hand done, meant to decorate. I don't know that it was actually used for warmth. Over here we have the place where we would maybe keep the babies and the newborns, and where would they be but close to the warmth and the hoping that they'll live through this. So in the day, people had lots of children, as you know, and they would have lots of children because they were an asset to the family. But with that came weaker children, not enough time between it, and mothers would suffer. So having a room like this where the mother could get strong, the baby could stay warm, it actually helped guarantee a little more time for the both mother to recover and the babies to get stronger, to build up the family. Family's important. Family's always important. So in here, this is a very special room. Cozy, warm, off the kitchen, and all where the activity of the household is going on, and they can be part of it. This house was built in the salt box style of the colonial times on the East Coast. Pretty rare to be out here on this type of style. The salt box style is 2 stories high on one side and has a slope going down to the other side. The other side in this case is the kitchen and the birthing room. And the 2-story side, guess what? Here are the steps that go upstairs, and the children are upstairs. Now, part I like about this part is that parents know exactly what their kids are doing, even though the kids don't know that parents know what they're doing. Bedrooms over on that side, children are above. They even know the steps and the sounds of each step. So hidden in this living room area is a secret door and the most narrow steps you can ever imagine. Tiny little things that you go up. I'm pretty sure parents know how to get up there pretty quickly if they need to. But the children coming down the stairs and up the stairs, of course, don't need a lot of room. Two bedrooms upstairs and storage, which is in the slant part of the salt box that goes by. So again, 2 stories on one side and 1 story at the bottom. Great for snow collection coming down. We don't get that much. And this door was also done in the graining so that it looks like it's a beautiful walnut look feel, and it's just really actually a regular fir. So it's kind of like the sneaky part. Welcome to the east bedroom. This is the parents' room. This part is if that's the heartbeat, this is the head of the whole household, because they know what's going on in every room. And don't forget the upstairs where the children are. They know the sounds, they know what's happening, and they know how to get there fast. This room's small, like all rooms are, small and carefully put together. A simple bed, in this case it would be considered a double bed, which is pretty nice for the day. And 2 pillows, let's look at that. And of course they would be down pillows. Down would be the underbelly of the underfeathers of a goose. Softest that you can get out, but of course it would be natural products, not the foam that everybody's used to. Then of course we have another crazy quilt right here, and often these were put together from the clothing that was used once before on a shirt, apron, skirt. Pieces of it that were still usable would be cut up and re-sewn together. Hand stitching, even the thread would be reused from the outfit, or the buttons. So this is special, one of those crazy quilts put together. This bed is called a rope bed, and here's why. Easy to carry around. The ticking, right here, again filled with feathers, and the bottom part of the bed is nothing but woven rope together across, and you can make this bed frame so flat that it's easy to carry around, especially going across the prairies. Under the bed, no indoor toilets, sorry to say. You would have the night pot. So here it is, and with a lid, always with a lid. It would be the youngest children's job to take care of this, unless of course they were too young. And they would go take care of it and bring it back washed out and put it right back underneath the beds. All beds had this. That was a normal and important part of your daily routine. I suppose there isn't that much intimate, privacy in something like this. And of course you have a dresser in the back. Spinning wheels could be in this room, but usually they were in the other room, somewhere where there was more room, and a trunk. On the walls, this room would have been lined with pegs so that you could hang up your clothes. There's no closet in here that is usable for clothing. There weren't that many clothes. And then over on this side, I'll bring it to you, would be a wash basin and a pitcher. This is how you would wash. Let me tell you, people didn't smell that great. And the reason is there'd be bath once a week. Normally the daily bath would be right from here. This pitcher full, you wash with a towel, and you pour your water in, then you dump your water back out. Where do we dump the water? But back into the yard, or on the flowers, or in the garden, somewhere where it could be reused. And this would be the personal side of keeping clean and hygiene. Not an easy thing here, but it was just part of the day. This is a piece of property that belonged to the Larkin donation land claim. It was full of apple trees already established by the time Horace Dibble found the property and bought this piece. One of the original apple trees, we have 2 of them, is right here in front of us. You can see that it's hollow, of amazingness. Look at this, it's a completely hollow tree. However, it's still producing fruit. And every year we add that into our own pie festival. So this is an amazing tree, still around. 2 are the only two are left. Thank you for joining us visiting the Dibble House in Molalla, Oregon. It's a privilege to have you here, and so many more details you'd like to see in person. One of the nice things about coming in person is that you get to actually see, touch, and smell the real world of the pioneer days in settlement.
Thank you for spending time with Welcome Molalla. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that you will come back for more and share with your friends.